All right. Well, I have just after 101. So it's time to get going today. And welcome on behalf of Plano Public Library. We're glad to have you with us. We have a wonderful presentation today on communication and how this can help you in all aspects of your life to find better results. We have a wonderful presenter with us today. Debra Austin is a business coach and consultant with more than 18 years of experience enhancing the performance of individual executives, teams, and organizations. Her background encompasses a wide range of experience, including strategic planning, individual development, team building, sales management, marketing, training, and facilitation. Debra is a proud graduate of Purdue University and Southern Methodist University. She is also recognized by the International Coaching Federation as a professional certified coach. Debra, we're so happy to have you with us today. Take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Christian, as always, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. You know, today it's one of those topics that touches all of us. There is considerable evidence to suggest that those who lack communication skills struggle with both professional and personal relationships. And the struggle really shouldn't surprise us if you think about how much time we spend interacting with our peers, with our colleagues, with our family members, and how that quality and the quality of that communication affects our relationships. This webinar today is geared towards helping you to build on your communication skills so that you can reduce the chance of a misunderstanding, help to solve problems that come up because you hear both sides and understand what's being discussed, and allow you to take advantage of opportunities that you may have previously missed because those communication skills or there was a communication breakdown between you. To communicate with impact and build stronger relationships with others, whether it's a customer, a colleague, your boss, your spouse, your children, and to enhance your ability to influence others, there are really 6 basic communication principles you need to be aware of and to adopt. They are, 1, focus on the behavior, not the personality. 2, being specific in your communication. 3, using the power of questions. 4, listen actively. 5, communicate assertively. And 6, to understand nonverbal communication as well. We're going to look at each one of these in turn over the next 50 minutes, 45 minutes or so. With that said, let's start with the first communication principle, and it's focus on behavior, not personality. Personality statements are generally judgments, positive or negative about a person. And they tend to have people put their hackles up and become defensive. Some examples, as you see here, are you are a nice person, or you're lazy. What we want to shift to instead are behavior statements that describe how a person is acting. And in this case, you may say as a personality judgment, you are a nice person. But the behavior statement would look something like, well, you make a point of saying hello to everyone every day. Personality judgment might sound something like, you're lazy. The behavior statement would be, well, you were late 15 minutes on this meeting and 20 minutes on the last meeting. Here's the bottom line. Any changes or improvements that need to happen are ultimately going to be changes in behavior, not personality. Yet sometimes the feedback we give is more about a person's identity than their behavior, which is one of the main reasons for communication breakdown. Professional communicators, strong communicators, make sure that they never use personality judgments and always focus on the behavior. So then let's move on to our second communication principle. One thing skilled communicators have in common is that they are very specific, because vagueness itself creates questions. For example, let's go back to customer service again. You provide excellent service. Well, a skilled communicator is going to be telling you what kind of service and what does the person actually do. Here we go. Example, you make a point of saying hello to everyone every day. Very specific. Another one, you don't ask customers for all the information we need on the applications. Very specific. What is it that you're not doing? What is the behavior that's not happening? These are statements that describe the actions of the person and explain what the person did specifically. When we look towards the third communication principle, a great place to start is with the question, who is in control of any conversation? Is it the speaker? Is it the person being spoken to? Is it the person questioning, or is it the person that's responding? What we know to be true, and most salespeople know this quite well, is the person who is asking the questions is the person who is in control of the conversation. Questions put you in control of the situation because you are the one who is guiding or controlling what everyone else thinks about. Often when I facilitate a workshop in person or on communication or sales, I use an exercise where I go around the table or around the room and I ask each person one at a time, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite color? When I get to the last person, or maybe the person towards the end, I'll change it to what's your favorite flavor? So inevitably, that last person that I ask will answer the question, what's your favorite color? So what is happening here? What happens is because they know what the question is, they've already formulated the answer and they're no longer listening to the question that I'm asking. They weren't prepared for that question because they were thinking about their favorite color. And I, as the questioner, have been controlling their thoughts. So what we know about communication is that asking questions is essential, especially if you're in a sales or customer service role. Asking good questions will show the other person that you are hearing what they're saying, and it will guide the conversation in a direction that will give you all of the information that you need to solve the issue or to help them with what they need. Not only that, but as you ask the questions and you come back, you begin to build a rapport, because when people know that you are hearing them and that you care about what they're saying, they listen to what you have to say. You're ultimately sending a message that what they are saying is important to you and that you're looking to meet their needs. All just by asking questions. So next, let's just dive a little deeper and look at some of the different types of questions you may use to accomplish this. Two big categories that we often talk about are open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Not only is it important that we take control of the conversation by asking the questions, it's also important that we ask the right kind of questions for the information we're trying to get. Open-ended questions are generally going to be more efficient and effective than closed-ended questions for gathering information. Let me give you an example. When you ask an open-ended question, most of the time they can be answered with a yes or no. They are more likely and more powerful when used to engage people and to draw information out. You cannot say just yes or no. So one of those, for example, might be, what did you think of the webinar? That's not a yes or no question. You have to give me more information. On the other hand, closed-ended questions are leading questions. But as long as they are not threatening, intensive, or too challenging, they can help build cooperation. For example, did you like this webinar? That's a yes or no question. When I ask the first question, what did you think of the webinar? You're much more likely to give me information about it, what resonated with you, what didn't. When I ask that closed-ended question, it's just like, yes, I liked it. No, I didn't. And that's the end of the conversation. Another way of looking at questions that you ask are to divide them into two categories. Are they fact-finding questions or clarifying questions? Fact-finding questions tend to be closed questions to establish facts. So these are going to be things like, how many people do you have on your team? What is the best road to take from here? You know, that road, or I have 7 people. Clarifying questions, on the other hand, are ways that you can rephrase something that's been said to you, or check to make sure what you heard or what you think you heard was correct. So you may say something like, Am I writing thinking that you meant this? Are you saying that this is the way it should be? Again, clarifying questions. Another way to look at questioning is to look at developmental questions versus testing questions versus leading questions. By now, you're starting to get the feel that there's a lot of questions, but most of it is closed-ended, open-ended. But then we just can refine on that based on the information we're trying to get. So those developmental questions, those are going to increase the amount of information you gather. Tell me a little bit about your staff people. Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you give me an example of when this didn't work? Can you give me an example of why this bothers you? Testing questions are usually going to be used to see where a person falls. They might tell you a lot of things and you said, well, you mentioned that, you needed to have this by tomorrow. Is that important to you? You're testing to see how important it is. Or what is your reaction to that? You're trying to get some feedback as to, maybe I made a statement. You want to, what do you think about that? Well, I think it's true. I think it's a bunch of crap, whatever that may be. The last category, the leading questions, is where you give the other person the answer to your question or the answer you want from them. Think about the time when you went to buy something and they said, well, most of our customers buy this model because it's the best. Would you like that as well? Yes or no, but I've also led you to think, okay, this is the best one. Or it might be like, which color is better for you, X or X? I didn't give you the option by saying, what color do you like? I'm saying, which one is best for you? You commonly see this when people are in sales, when they're setting appointments. Which day works best for you next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock? I'm leading you down a direction I want you to go. So now that we've looked at all of these different types of questions, let's look at the fourth communication principle. And this one is probably one of the most critical. This is when you listen actively. So when we focus on listening as one of the most important communication skills, this is almost guaranteed to improve the quality of the communications that you have with other people and those relationships. And honestly, it's not all that easy to listen, even for a minute or two. Most of us are so used to multitasking that the ideal of focusing in on one conversation is very difficult and can be challenging. So what happens quite often for us is that as somebody is speaking, even for a minute or two, we're already working on the information that we're receiving. And as it arrives for us, we're already thinking about, what do I need to say back? What is the reason for doing this? Oh, this is what they're going to say. The tendency of us as a listener to jump in ahead and complete the message before it's given to us with possible questions or answers hampers our communication. Effective listening, active listening, has to be active. It's not a passive process. This means we have to put some effort into listening. Just being aware that it is difficult and noticing the differences between hearing things that come to you versus active listening will take us a long way in improving our communication skills. So now that I've said all of that, let's talk a little bit more about what this active listening is. And just a quick note, if I forget, at the end, I'm going to give you a link where you can take a really short quiz that gives you an idea of how good of a listener you actually are. So let's look at some examples and go through some few tips that can help us enhance our listening skills, specifically our active listening. And there's really 5 big chunks we want to focus on here. And listening actively is going to require you to do these, but it will almost guarantee that you improve your communication skills. This 5th communication principle looks like this. When you're listening actively, you're going to give your complete attention. You're going to acknowledge the emotion. You're going to give confirmation that what you heard, what you think you heard is correct. You're going to paraphrase the emotion and the message that you received, and you're going to check back for confirmation. Let's look at some examples of each of those. When you give your complete attention, that means you stop what you were doing. We're working from home now, so it's easy to look at the other screen or check your email or check your text while you're talking to someone. You want to stop. You want to make eye contact with the person you're talking to. And you want to use nonverbal signals like nodding. Yes, I got that. Okay, I understand. Or I'm not really clear on that. I don't get that. You also want to acknowledge the emotion when you see it in somebody's face because you're looking at them eyeball to eyeball. You seem angry about that. You see the shoulders go up, or you may say something like, wow, you sound really excited about that. When you acknowledge the emotion, it causes the person to pause for a moment and actually absorb what they are showing you and to correct you if you're wrong. You want to get confirmation that you're correct. So they may say something like, well, no, I'm not angry. I'm just frustrated. Totally different emotion. Or yes, I am very excited about this. Okay, so maybe I need to tell you more, or maybe you connected to what I'm trying to share with you and we can go from there. An excellent tool for improving communication is paraphrasing the emotion and message. One of the reasons I like this one so much in terms of active listening, because if you are listening actively and you paraphrase back, it keeps you from wandering off. It keeps your brain from wandering off to something else. If I'm going to give you back what you just gave me, maybe in my words and to check with you, then I have to be listening to what you're saying. So, you said you're frustrated. So you're frustrated because you wanted to talk to the supervisor. I'm asking, well, there's the emotion you gave me. Is this what you were telling me? Were you excited that you attend the academy training academy training program? Or, so what you're telling me is that this has been an issue for you for a long time. The last one for active listening that we really want to focus on is checking. Does that sound right? Do I understand you correctly? Is that what you're saying? So these are 5 different ways to actively listen in a conversation that will improve what you hear, but it also is going to reinforce to the person who is speaking that you are listening and you care about what they have to say. There's nothing more powerful than that in a conversation. So let's look now at the 5th communication principle. This one is about communicating, but communicating assertively. People usually fall into 4 types of communication styles. And again, this is a broad brush and it may depend on the situation, but there are really 4 big styles. It's aggressive, it's passive aggressive, and it's assertive. In this context, we're talking about assertiveness is all about your rights and other people's rights as well. Developing your assertiveness depends very much on your ability to express these rights in speech, in text, and through appropriate nonverbal communication, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few moments. In developing our assertiveness, we will often have to be prepared to negotiate our rights to balance these with those of others, i.e. my right to speak, my right to express my opinion with your right to speak and your right to express your opinion. Let's take a closer look at each of these 4 communication styles and things that may be pitfalls and things that may be beneficial to us. The assertive person is likely to look the other person in the eye. And they're going to not stare the person down. That would be more of an aggressive person, but really just to say, look, I'm looking at you, I'm focusing on you, and giving that confident degree of eye contact. Being assertive in your communication style involves taking into consideration, what the other person is looking for, what you need, as well as, what is the desire at the end of this conversation. People who are assertive communicators encourage other people to be open and honest about their views. They actually empower them to do that, about their wishes and feelings as well, so that both parties in the conversation act appropriately. Assertive communicators in many occasions repeat their message several times until it's acknowledged or appreciated. So if there's something that I'm saying that's important, I want to make sure you hear me. And that means I need that acknowledgement or agreement or something that you've actually heard it. When you are communicating assertively, it is very, very important to use I messages where you take responsibility for your feelings. You messages tend to put other people on the defensive and make you come across as aggressive. And when somebody clicks in the defensive mode, quite often the true communication will shut down. So for example, To put it in the way you might say it in the you form would be like, well, you made me angry when you said I was lazy. You made me angry when you said I was lazy. Instead, you may want to say, I am angry because I heard you say I was lazy. Again, it's an I as opposed to what you did. Instead of something like you are frustrating when you keep saying the same thing over and over again. I am frustrated because I think you are saying the same thing over and over again. You see the difference. You feel the difference. By taking the I route, you eliminate that defensiveness that comes up when you say you did this, you did that. In personal relationships, business relationships, when you get to the defensive point, communication shuts down. When we look at that aggressive personality, this is usually, unfortunately, the bully. This is the person who's a lot more selfish. They know what they want and they like, and they don't necessarily care about the needs of the other person in the conversation. They want to make sure they're heard. Whether that other person is heard is not important. Aggressive communicators often think of themselves as being the superior person in the conversation. They think they are okay and the rest of the world is not. Their voice, their opinions and needs are most important, and they may behave as though others don't matter. Now, if you think about this in the scheme of what we already talked about, of people knowing, liking, feeling like you're hearing them, active listening, where you're listening to their opinion and paraphrasing it back, you can see how the aggressive communication style would basically, again, shut down communication between those two people or even multiple people. The third style that we look at is passive aggressive. The passive aggressive communicator tends to be passive, but they're also obstructionists. Their resistance to the decision that's been made in interpersonal or occupational situations. Oftentimes they're actually a saboteur. They won't necessarily say what they're feeling or express that stress or frustration, but they'll come back around in subtle ways and put it back on the table in a seemingly a passive way. You see this a lot of time in conversations where people may or may not agree with you, but then they will go back outside of that conversation and share it. Well, I can't believe she said this or whatever, but they never gave you that in the conversation so you can change it. Oftentimes, this type of communication and communicator will manifest their thinking, their conversation as resentment, stubbornness, procrastination, where they say, yes, I'll do it, but they don't do it and never address why they didn't. Sullenness and intentionally failing to do a requested task, okay, I'll get it done, but I never do it. Passive aggressive communicators may want to get even or use trickery or manipulation to get their way. They are usually not as open as aggressive people where you see coming, you know where they're coming from. And they are often nice to your face and use the behind the back techniques to get even. They attempt to gain control or get their way by using the silent treatment. I won't say anything. I don't argue with you. I'm just not doing it. And they will withdraw their attention. They'll be the gossiper, the tattler, and they'll refuse to cooperate. When asked what is wrong, they often will tell you, oh, it's nothing. And even say, oh, nothing with a smile, even though their body language is clearly stating that there is something wrong, but they won't share that. The fourth type of communicator that we see most oftenly is the passive person. And the passive person is really more, they're going to comply with the wishes of others. Many passive communicators adopt a passive response because they have a strong need to be liked by others. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to push back. They may not regard themselves as equals, and they tend to place greater weight on what other people have to say, other people's rights, other people's wishes and feelings. Now, if you think about this in a group environment or a team environment, if you have the person who is assertive, where they're looking after the rights for everybody else, then you have the person who's aggressive, who's going to speak out and step over anybody who doesn't agree. Then the passive aggressive person who is going to not disagree, but not cooperate at the same time. And the passive person who rolls. You see the dynamics in this group. If we can focus as a communicator on becoming that person who can step out and be assertive and make sure the rights of other people are included in the conversation, the team benefits overall, even though you may have these other types of communicators as part of that team. So a little bit around the circle, but it's something that's really, really important when you recognize the communicator's style and also what's driving them and what their biggest fears are, so you can start to address them. Now, before we move on, there's an area that we have to talk about, and it's what's called the telephone etiquette here. We know for a fact that much of our communication is done by telephone, now by email, by text. And we're going to focus right here just on telephone, because telephone has a few other elements in it. It is such an obvious and ordinary and totally familiar way of communicating that we scarcely think about it. We don't give it a thought as to how it is coming across. But think about this. The person who answers the phone for a company or an organization, they are that first impression. Their voice, the manner they answer the call, and the style will be crucial in determining what the perception is of that company, that organization, and even of the individual themselves. Over the phone, we can pick up things like the warmth of tone. Is it welcoming and friendly, or cool, or cold, or abrupt? We can think of things that are like the pace. Is it a smooth pace where they talk smoothly, or is it an assured, or are they hesitant and like, maybe I don't know, let me get back with you. I'm not really sure about that. The inflection, does the voice rise and fall, or is it pretty much flat? Hi, how are you doing? This is so-and-so. How can I help you? And what's the volume? Is it assertive and reasonable to overstrong and uncomfortably loud? Is it inaudible? Hi, how are you? My name is so-and-so. All of these different tones and all of these different features are important in carrying the message. The words themselves may be forgotten, but the impression that lingers from those features are what callers and receivers in this conversation, especially over the phone, will take away. So before we move on to that sixth communication principle, let's quickly take a look at some key elements for telephone etiquette. And here they are. It's really a lot, but I'm going to run through them really quickly just so you have a feel for them. It's amazing what happens if you're smiling when you're on the phone. It comes across in your voice. In fact, when I was a sales trainer and as a salesperson, one of the things we talked about was putting a mirror right by your computer so that you can look at it and make sure you were smiling as you answered the phone. A simple one is identify yourself. Tell people who you are, because when you exchange names, it becomes more of a conversation than just a voiceless person on the other end of the phone line. Listen. When you're on the phone, listening becomes more important because you don't have the facial expressions, you don't have the body language to interpret what's really being said and what's needed. If you are having to put a person on the phone or it's been really hard to get a hold of you, go ahead and apologize. It's pretty easy to do, but it changes the whole tone of the conversation than when somebody's on hold for 30 minutes or even 2 minutes and you don't say anything about it. Be organized. If you're calling someone, before you pick up the phone, have an idea of what you're trying to cover, an idea of what needs to be conveyed. So you're not all over the place and they have to go through and pick through the story to figure out what you were trying to tell them. Bring energy. Think about the call that you've had where somebody talks. It's like, hi, yeah, this is me. Yeah, so what? If you are tired, you sound disinterested. Even if you just stand up and move your arms a few times before making the call, you will change how that energy comes across. Sit up straight. Again, you don't realize how much of this comes through in your voice. If you're slumped over, popped up, it makes a large difference in how you're heard on the other end of that call. If you can, focus on one thing at a time. We're all multitasking, but it really, really doesn't work for us as much as we think it does. And the only way to make sure you're hearing what's being said and hearing those nuances is to be focused. Ask for permission if you have to jump off the call. Use their name. You gave them your name at the beginning, use their name. Be professional. If you're in an industry or something where you have buzzwords in your organization that people outside of it don't understand, use the real words, not the buzzwords. And then don't interrupt. You may hear from the same people over and over again. Most people's first instinct is, oh yeah, I know about that. But when you interrupt someone, it's abrupt. It doesn't feel good for them, and it may hamper your communication. Lose the food and drink. And if you can, end on a positive note where you actually acknowledge the person and just wish them a good day. I mean, that's easy stuff to do and it doesn't cost much, but it makes a huge, huge difference when you're communicating with someone. And if somebody does compliment you, say thank you. Again, these are freebies. They don't cost you much in time, but it makes the conversation that much better. You talk about building rapport, it improves it that much more. Okay, here we go. We go for the 6th communication principle, and that's understanding the nonverbal communication. What we know from many, many studies, and even in person, is that body language speaks louder than any words you can ever use. Whether you're telling people that you love them, you're angry with them, or don't care less about them, your body movements reveal your thoughts, your moods, and your attitudes. Both of these considerably reveal what your subconscious body is telling the observer, despite the words. There are a lot of studies on this, but most of them show some examples where the extremes are huge. So I'm going to share some statistics from a study by Professor Albert Marabin of UCLA. And this is what he tells us from his study. People hear, what people hear or are communicating, what they see in communication is only 7% of the words that you use. Think about that. We just spent all this time talking about words, but it's only 7%. We're very careful with those words, but it's so small of an amount in terms of our communication. However, tone of voice is 38%. Think about that, just by changing your tone. When you think of voices that you like, some things that may come to mind are their pitch. Is it a low pitch? Is it the volume? Does it vary? So this interest, is it energetic, high? Is it medium pace or is it very fast? The tone, is it warm and friendly or very cold? And even the clarity, do they drag the words out and you have to kind of follow and know when to break them up? So our tone of voice makes a huge role in the message that we send and how people perceive us, regardless of the words that we're using. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Think about this. Think about your kid. Or okay, worse than that, think about your dog. Dogs don't necessarily understand a whole vocabulary, but they can still get our message just based on our tone, even though we may use the same words. If I say, if you do that again, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. If you said that to your dog hears that tone and he's going to act differently. Other than if you say it like, oh, if you do that again, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Two different responses if we heard it as individuals, but by knowing the dog doesn't even understand all of our language, the difference you see and how that's received is huge. Last, body language, 55%. 55% of what is communicated is through our body language. So that tells us we need to spend some time looking at body language, and that's what we'll do next. When you look at these pictures, I bet if we were in a room together and talking, you could tell stories for each one of them. Like the first one is probably a couple that's mad at each other, right? That sounds good. The second one, here's a lady like, what the heck? What is the point? Where are we going? The fourth one, the guy may be distraught or upset, just going across the top. The fourth one down here is where he's just pleading. Okay, what's the problem? What's happening? The fifth one, panic. Oh my gosh, I locked my keys in the car. The sixth one, just worried. Here's gnawing on the lips. And then the seventh one may be defensive or grumpy. They're leaning back, got their arms across. Our nonverbal communication can often be broken down into a few categories. Again, the first one is, what's that facial expression? Particularly the eyes and the mouth. What gestures are we making? What are we doing with our arms and our legs? Are they crossed? Are they hands on the head? What's our posture? Are we slumped over? Are we standing up straight? How close are we standing to a person? All of these play into body language. So here's what we know. The nod, and when you're listening, the nod plays a big part in keeping the conversation going. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. Without saying a word, just by nodding your head. We indicate to the person that we're talking to that we're paying attention, and we don't want to take over the speaker's role. We're not ready to talk. We're listening to you. Think about showing understanding. The slow head nod encourages the speaker to continue shifting gears, and speeding up. Your nodding indicates that you understand. Yeah, I really get it. I get it. As opposed to, yeah, I get that. The posture, when we lean forward, we're showing interest and liking. When we lean back, we're sort of pulling back out of that conversation. We can show commitment to the conversation simply by moving in, moving out. We can show friendliness and honesty just by opening our arms, including a receptive and friendly atmosphere, versus closing our arms, especially closing our arms and leaning back away from the person. All of these are just different types of body language. And again, body language shows so much more in our communication. It communicates so much more than just the words that we're using. So a few other things to think about, when we are talking to someone, if you start to see somebody choose, adjusting their clothes, biting their fingernails, smoking, which most people don't do so much anymore, shaking a shoe, start fiddling around with their phone or a pencil, or even running fingers through their hair, we know that they are either nervous or they're checking out of the conversation. They're not there anymore. Tapping the foot, a lot of times this is nervous energy. Maybe like they're waiting to say something. They're waiting you to finish so they can get to their part. Running fingers through the hair. Okay, so I'm frustrated. Can you get to the point? What's happening here? All of these are things that are communicating something to us, regardless of the intent, regardless of the words that are wrapped around them. Just a quick shot of some things that you can look at also in terms of interpreting body language. When the head is nodding in agreement, or if the head is down, I'm disinterested. What's it like? What are we showing? Your eyes, when you're looking at them in the eyes, or you're overly staring, like, are you done yet? That natural smile versus the twisted smile, which can be more sarcasm. Again, the openness, open arms, crossed arms. All of these are tools that are communicating to the person that we're talking to, and that we need to be aware of them so we can communicate the message that we want them to have, not the one that they may be interpreting that's not truly what we intend to see. If you find yourself doing these things and that's not your intent to communicate that you're being sarcastic or checking out, then this is something you can adjust. So we've kind of gone through the 6 principles of communication. I do want to share a couple other slides to you that I think, one other slide that I think will be helpful to you. And this is when people are not necessarily being truthful. However, I'm going to share them with the caveat that is not always so. Just as always, if somebody's crossing their arms doesn't mean that they're checking out or defensive. Sometimes they just may be cold. So you have to look for other things to go with that. But when it comes to some of these things, here are 8 things you can look at to kind of spot when somebody may not be totally honest with you. Some people can look you straight in the eye when they're telling a lie. Other people sort of look off to the distance or look over your head because they cannot. That's a good lie detector move. Or, eye rubbing because they don't want you to see what's in their eyes. Covering the source of deception. People are holding back their feelings and emotions. Oftentimes they'll touch their heads, their faces particularly, or their mouths, and they're covering their mouth up so you don't see what's coming out. Touching their nose when someone lies, it kind of releases a chemical actually that triggers the nasal tissues as well. It's really kind of interesting. It's called the Pinocchio response. Faking a smile. When the smile is not genuine and you can tell that it's not. Well, I'm smiling to pretend that I'm here with you, but I'm not agreeing. Minimizing hand gestures when they use small ones instead of these big sweeping gestures. And then maximizing body touches. Oh, you're really saying that? Oh, but that's not really sincere. So those are just a few things that you might want to look at in terms of spotting deception in a conversation. Again, all of these come with a warning, stress warning, that some of these are not to be taken too literally. A person could cross their arms because they're cold, or simply find it comfortable to stand that way or sit that way. And a good thing to do when you're trying to interpret body language is to look for sudden changes in responses to something you've said. If I'm standing here open, arms are down, and also might do this, then that's probably more of a shift in terms of the conversation as opposed to me being cold. So at the end of the day, we've covered the 6 basic principles of communication, focusing on the behavior, not the personality, being very specific about what you're trying to communicate, using those different types of questions, open-ended, closed questions, the more where you're digging for more information versus just trying to get affirmation that you're on the right track. Listening actively. Again, I can't say enough about that. If you're interested in more information on active listening, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got my email address on the end of this slides, and I've got some other things, resources I'm happy to share with you. Communicating assertively. Again, this is not aggressive, it's assertive where you're respecting the rights of everybody in the conversation. And then looking at the nonverbal communication and realizing that the nonverbal takes up the other 93%. The words are only 7. I hope you've gained some knowledge, some tips that will help you improve your communication. And just importantly, I hope you maybe have identified an action item or 2 that you will walk away with. Before I close, I do want to share a couple resources with you. There are 3 books that I really, really like that talk about conversations, especially difficult ones. The first one's Crucial Conversations, and the title is actually longer, but if you search on Crucial Conversations in Carrie Patterson, you'll find it. Just Listen by Mark Goldstein, and Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone. Both of the 2 that are in bold are actually available to you via the Plano Library, which is a wonderful source of resources. And I've had the Plano Library next because I know Christian's going to give you some more resources. But if you haven't checked out what's available there, you're really missing out. So with that, I am just going to say thank you for your time. I'll take any questions. If we have time for those, Christian will let us know. And remember I mentioned earlier to you that there's a quick quiz, like a 10-question quiz that'll give you an idea of how good of a listener you are. Here is the link for it. And I'm going to grab it and actually stick it in the chat. And I'll do that as Christian is talking. But it takes you a few seconds, maybe like a minute, but it'll give you an idea of where you stand in terms of what your listening skills, your active listening skills are. So again, thank you so much. Pleasure being with you guys. And if there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for a wonderful presentation as always. Anyone who has questions, please feel free to put them into the chat, and Deborah's happy to answer them. Meanwhile, I'm going to share my screen and just give you just a couple of minutes worth of information about resources that are available at Plano Public Library, and for you professionally and for business resources. Any questions for Deborah? Okay. If there are questions, you're still welcome to put them in there, and we will get to those next. So Plano Public Library is more than books. I'm going to give you just a very quick overview of some of the things that you can find at the library. And you can get a Plano Library card free, not only as a resident of Plano, but also if you're a resident of Allen, Frisco, Garland, McKinney, Richardson, the Colony, or Wiley. There are skill building resources at the library for you, including LinkedIn Learning, which typically cost money to get a subscription. But when you have a Plano Library card, that's a part of the services that you receive at no cost. The classes that are available, I've listed some of the kinds of topics here, but there are lots and lots of topics, especially related to technology, business skills, and digital creativity. We also have skill building courses through what's called the Great Courses that are available on Canopy, which is our video streaming service. Again, this does require a Plano Library card. Also, some of the Great Courses programs are available to check out on DVD. Career development programs are the things like you're attending today that we offer via Zoom and sometimes in the library, and we'd love to have you attend more of those. You can find those on the Plano Library website, planolibrary.org, which I put into the chat earlier, and you can see the schedule of events. At the top of the website, there are 3 different boxes that link you to the calendar, the schedule, or the city calendar of events, which gives a little more detail there as well. And you can sign up directly from any of those sources. We have additional resources to assist you. Reference Solutions is a powerful database full of business information. It is updated by the company that maintains it annually so that you can know that these are reliable information about businesses in the area, actually throughout the nation, that will help you with marketing or data analysis if you're trying to start a business or something like that. Small Business Reference Center is another resource for you in creating your business plan and preparing for a business. SCORE Mentor. We have SCORE as a business partner of the Small Business Administration. They're volunteers, and a mentor actually comes to Schimmelpfennig Library on Thursdays by appointment to meet with individuals who are starting a small business or maybe just have an idea that they think might turn into a business, or they're already operating a business, and you can get free guidance and resources, advice through the SCORE Mentor. This is no cost. You must book an appointment, which you can find that information on our website as well. The digital creation spaces are available at Parr and Haggard libraries with the Adobe Suite software and specialized equipment for video and audio projects. And there are also the Adobe Creative Cloud is available at each of our libraries on specific machines. So you would need to ask about that equipment when you go in if you would like to utilize it. Book a Librarian is a service that we provide where you can, as a Plano library card holder, you can go on our website and schedule a 30-minute appointment with a librarian who can help walk you through any of these resources, or, for instance, help you research some specific information, or help you perhaps use a feature on Excel that you aren't sure how to use or something like that. So lots of opportunities to get assistance with learning. We offer access to business news through the New York Times, the Dallas Morning News, and truly worldwide newspapers and magazines through Press Reader. And that is also found on our website. And you can visit with library staff at any of our buildings. We have 5 libraries in Plano to ask these questions about how to access these resources. Lots and lots of e-books and e-magazines. We have leadership, as Deborah pointed out, some of the leaders that she pointed out today, and we have those resources available at the library. And just because we know that we all have, other interests and families and other things besides business skills, we have a number of art and creativity programs and resources at the library, including we do teach 3D design, and we have 3D printers at 3 of our libraries, at Parr, at Davis, and at Harrington. We also offer language learning. There are ESL classes at the library on Monday and Wednesday evenings, and we have an app available called Pronunciator, at which you can set the learning language to whatever language is your initial language, and learn over 80 different languages through a lot of different activities. And then lots and lots of family engagement activities, especially related to science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We have a number of upcoming classes that you may be interested in related to technology, business skills, business building, and more. LinkedIn for Career Success has been a 4-week series. The last of those is coming up next Wednesday, and it is focusing on LinkedIn learning and what you can find there to increase your skills. These are all available on Zoom. So the recordings are posted to our YouTube channel, so you can see the past classes of LinkedIn for Career Success there as well. Bank of America will be presenting Enduring Job Loss or Pay Cut. So you can make financial plans if you are considering building a business, or if you are concerned about your job, or perhaps are still facing some uncertainties or job loss or a less income through the pandemic and the things that we've all been through in the last year and a half. But that's available to you on November the 9th. That's going to be online. We have business startup information. Debra will be back with us for best customer service practices. You can use that as an employee or as a business that's building. We have some technical skills coming up where you can learn about video and audio projects, photography and video, and HTML basics will help you learn basics of building a web page. We teach Google Suite programs, and I'm really excited about the vision board party that we're having in December. Whether you want to strengthen your family ties, whether you want to build your career in a thoughtful way, whether you want to start a business, you can create a vision board that will help you focus your efforts and accomplish your goals. Our video library includes many wonderful classes that are on YouTube, available for you now as a recording. Like today's program will be posted there as well. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I hope that you will try out our new podcast. The library has a new podcast that's coming once a month on the first of every month. The October podcast can be found right now. It's called Plano Library Speaks, wherever you find your podcasts, or you can go to our blog at planolibrarylearns.org, which is also in the chat. And there's a link directly to the podcast there or from our website. That's a lot of information I just threw at you. If there are any questions for Debra or for me about library resources, we are happy to accept those. I don't see any questions. We are really happy that you were able to join us today. I hope that we'll see you again at more library classes that are coming up or at our buildings. We are open and here to serve you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much, Debra, for your wonderful, what you had to share with us, the expertise and the knowledge that you had to share. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you. Y'all have a wonderful day.